Hi, this is Sheila with Conscious Conversation Central, and today is Monday, November the 19th, 2018. And I'm joined by my good friends, Lisa Flamino Rush and BZ Rieger. And tonight we're going to talk about, this one's hot off the press. Be honest, what's the payoff in not allowing your soul to drive the ship? There's a lot that could be said in that. The first thing that came in for me when you mentioned that title, BZ, was that, well, I don't think there's a lot of folks that realize that they have a soul. Well, you know, it's like there are those that think they have a soul, but they don't really understand what that means. Maybe that's some of what I don't think I understood exactly what. I knew there was a life force inhabiting my body and making it animated. And I kind of had these concepts of the higher self, and you know, there's an awful lot of confusing stuff out there. Soul, spirit. I've heard things like there's a difference between a soul and a spirit, and you know, then coming from a Christian background, for me there was a lot about the word soul to begin with. But then when I started feeling into it a little bit more in regards to allowing the soul, because now I get it about the soul. Okay. I get, for me, I get my interpretation, my knowing of what my soul is to me anyway. Mm-hmm. And the only payoff that I can think of is the identity that I had created that was not associated with what I now associate partly of allowing my soul to drive the ship. It's been a very empowering process for me. Mm-hmm. But it's also been a bit of a at first it was a bit scary, because like, what the hell does everybody mean? I don't get it. But then I decided to do it anyway, right? To look into. No, I did. You know that. I've never made a secret of that. For me, the only thing I can think of right off the bat is that the biggest payoff is loss of identity that has been created by the ego. And we all know I have always taken issue with the idea of killing off the ego, but and helping the ego to get the memo, so to speak, that I wasn't trying to kill him off. I wanted him to work with me, not against me. You know. But yeah, that's my first answer as far as payoff.
When I hear that, the first thing that came to my mind was, if I had to think of a payoff, it would just be that I didn't have to take responsibility, because, you know, that's the first thing that I used to do, was really look externally and place blame for whatever current situation I was unhappy with that I was facing. And it's funny, and I'm saying this feeling like a real payoff. and yet to some degree it was, because I chose to do it for so long. And you know, we don't do anything without some sort of payoff, or we wouldn't do it. Right. But I have to say, embodying my I am presence, that is the real payoff. Now that's how I hold it. And so the more that it seemed like I was reserving my I am presence for, those holy moments.
When company was coming over or something, like the good dishes.
Yeah, when I was feeling really full of it, apparently, I don't know.
I was just wondering when the holy moments are. That's just me, but
yeah, they would rise up occasionally.
Oh, I see.
I would do something about it.
Every now and again, you're saying.
Yeah, it feels really silly, but I was quite serious about it at the time. Really dedicated to my moments of I am present.
Oh, I see. Of those moments that were relegated to when you were meditating,
there were few and far between.
oming over in the corner, were you?
Yes. We laughed, but it was real.
At least you're willing to admit it. There's.
Yeah.
I love you for that.
Then I forgave myself and I moved on.
That's right.
You get to do that.
Yes, you're right. We get to
That's
do
the
that.
whole payoff with the I am presence.
Right.
Piloting this ship.
Well, and one of the things that I wanted to bring out is that ties into what you were talking about at the very beginning, Sheila. And it's actually something that Lisa alluded to here with her, saving that only for the special moments. And that is, everybody has their own language for how they would describe things or how they hold things. And that's perfect. That's your own language, and it's your own shorthand within yourself. And what arises when you're part of a conversation, and all those who are in this energetic envelope are part of the conversation, because you're adding to it before you get to seeing it on a video posted up someplace. Even if you encounter this energetic envelope 8 days, 3 months, a couple of years from this moment that it's been, because there is no time. So it's always being added to. So that's important for everybody to remember. So they'll hold it different ways. But when you encounter this conversation and become part of it, regardless of how each one of us may discuss something in the language they may use, their corresponding energy frequency of what we are intentionally speaking of will light up within you and find the match for whatever the vernacular that you give to it, the way that you call it. And you may find yourself going, and shift how you change it. Or maybe if you were sitting on the fence about the way you language something and you weren't sure, you, in the process of coming into this conversation, coming into connection with this conversation, you would then not be on the fence anymore. You would fully be residing in, that's how I hold this, which is completely different languaging than any three of us have used, but you're owning now your own language. So that's kind of how all of this works. And the one other thing I wanted to say is the different components of you, the different entities of you, are different vibrational frequency corridors, we'll say, of you. So you are this marvelous mosaic tunnel, right, that has all different layers to it, and you know, they're almost gossamer like, so they're gauzy and they're very fluid and all different colors. And what people are realizing now is that they are actually the entire contents of that tunnel, let's say. You are all of those layers. You are all of those gossamer threads. You are all of those, you are each one of those mosaic tiles. And in any given moment, you could, if you were looking at it, you could say you're one in here and here and there that are in theory on different layers, because it's all you. So that's just another way to hold. Excuse me. Don't do that. Don't do it. To hold that. And as far as payoffs, you're right. You know, some people don't realize, well, if they're honest with themselves and they stand in the space of that honesty, which is open and loving, they actually do know. They may not know, as you say, Sheila, right in the, you know, the front thinking of it, but they do know because they feel it. They keep having different experiences. They keep having conversations, nudge them to do things. They keep feeling, you know, a warm embrace. So there's all these, they may blow a lot of it off, but this isn't happening in a vacuum. So they may have the perception, and they may stop. Thank you. They may have the perception, and they may have the propensity to keep saying, well, no, I don't have any of these kinds of things. But they do. They're alive. They're on this planet, you know, unless they check around and they hopped off and they're on some other planet. The energies are absolutely expanding and speeding up, and there is no escaping it. Now, for some, they may say, and a couple just chimed in, well, that I thought that was supposed to be good energy. I thought that was supposed to be fluffy energy. I thought that was supposed to be, you know, absolute love energy. It is. Why there's a perception that within you it's not feeling like that, it's because of all the discordant energy within you that you chose, because we all do, that you chose to keep replaying that script, to keep letting your ego mind run the ship, letting yourself belittle yourself, letting yourself keep convincing yourself that you're small, letting yourself, you know, be the very last in the line behind anybody else, as far as giving love or giving appreciation or giving trust or giving honor, any of those things. Giving yourself a break, you know, just something simple like that. So when you're doing that kind of stuff, you're choosing to put those other things aside, to keep, you know, staying with that programming. And so when you then have the response of, well, wait a minute, I'm not getting where are the warm fuzzies? I'm not getting any. And the reason that is because the other stuff there, you're getting them. You're actually getting lots of them, because it's sandpapering and chiseling and dusting and cleaning all of that other stuff off of you so that you can shine and be magnificent again, which is the truth of who you are. But all that stuff, all that dross is in the way, and so it has to come off. And so there's the perceived.
We've got a bit of a delay or something going on.
Okay. The perceived, chaos, the perceived absence of warm fuzzies, however you want to hold it, is just that. It's a perception. Because when you feel into it, and if you're not certain what that means, then be for a moment. Don't think for a moment. Just be for a moment. Breathe for a moment. Breathe intentionally for a moment. And when you hear, how long is this going to take? Or this is stupid. Or whatever kind of chatter that comes up, then celebrate. Because now you can start to see that you taking the action to be for a moment, and all of that other stuff is, kind of winging and flinging by.
Well, I just heard a question, BZ, in regards to just being for a moment. Well, how does one just be for a moment? Well, I'd like to offer something that was very helpful for me when I first started trying to figure out how to just be for a moment, because I was at the point where I wanted to examine anything that arose within me that felt discordant, or like I've said many times before, if I had a visceral reaction to something. And that question just now was, how does one know when is a good time to just be? Actually, well, for me, anytime I had a feeling rise up within me that if I'm listening to a conversation and I'm already preparing my answer before I've actually heard all of the conversation all the way through, that's a good time to just be. It was for me, because I realized that I was not hearing all of it. And what I finally really grokked all the way through was, not only was I not hearing it, but I wasn't allowing myself the opportunity to feel it, because I was already crafting my response. And how can one do that if one isn't allowing the not just the words, but the energetic behind the words? There's so much that comes through communication I am now very, very clear about. And I now quite understand why it is that I have such an issue regarding communication, because it's damn important that we allow ourselves that moment for all of that to wash over us. And this is a new process for all of us. That is a new process for all of us, because we've been told we have to, come on, let's, everything's right now, gotta get it and go, kind of deal. So we've been trained, we've trained ourselves. I've trained myself. I'm speaking from my own self on this, because you guys know I had an issue where if I don't answer somebody, I was feeling bad, because that was my programming and conditioning, giving myself a little extra time to feel into a thing. This is the way for me now to feel what's trying to be said, not just from the words, because of what you said earlier too about words. Everything is, we all have our own perceptions on things. So we have to allow ourselves to feel into things. That's what for me. So the answer to that question really is, if you find yourself crafting your response without hearing all of it, and even taking a 1, 2, 3, 4 count before you're getting ready to announce your answer, then you haven't allowed yourself to feel into anything. You're just spouting off an answer that reinforces a position that you held before you ever heard the question or considered the idea. In my view, that was for me mostly. That's how I realized, I finally comprehended that's what I was doing. And that might have been expected in the past, but going forward, I don't want my everything to be a programmed and conditioned response. I want to allow myself a moment, because I'm also finding in that moment that I recognize that programming all of a sudden. It's like, oh, wait a minute. If I had just spouted off, then it would have been a program that was spouting, not what I really, because now since I have been doing that, I'm able to see sometimes that programming come up. It's like, whoa, wait a minute.
The other wonderful thing that happens when you be for a moment, specifically, well, there's lots of ways to do it, but I want to take just for a moment when you're talking with the example that you gave about listening to this, listening to anything, being subject to one another in a conversation, which is what we all are doing, and communicating, truly communicating on all the various levels and layers that there are. And many are not seen or auditory in the normal, way that we think about that. So just on that example, you can, if you be with it, instead of crafting, different questions, you could write something down. You could, there's lots of ways you can play with it. One of the things I would say is play with it. Just play. If there's just a part of something, play with that. So pretend that it was, a ball or, a young kitten or something. How would you play? What would you say? No, you're wrong. And you'd hold it by the scruff of the neck and shake it. No, this is not how you do this. Or I call it this. But many people would go, oh, what are you, crazy? I would never do that. But we're doing that to ourselves. When we don't give ourselves the space for a moment. And that's the other thing. It doesn't take years. You don't have to quit your job. You don't have to ignore the significant other, or, if you have pets or kids or anything kind of stuff. It's not about time. It's about that space, that you allow yourself to be in and be for a moment. So here's the other thing from, accomplishing things. So whether it's accomplishing things that you're nudged to do in your conversation with your soul, if it's accomplishing things in your personal life, in your family, at work, when you get in the flow, allow yourself to be in the flow. Because if you would stop, if you didn't, we're not in the flow all the time because we don't allow ourselves to be in the flow all the time. So if we allow ourselves to be, that's, if we, for the moment we're born, and we're allowing, we would always be in the flow. We would never not be in the flow. And if someone came along and said, no, you got to do this over here, we could still be in the flow and shift what we're doing. And we would not script and encounter beings to come and do that to us, because we had chosen that we didn't need that. We didn't want that. That wasn't how we were scripting it. But anyways, I want to get back to the being. So when you allow yourself to be for a moment, if you're at work, you actually are from a work standpoint, from whether you have customers that you're involved with or you're actually producing something, whatever it is, you are actually much more effective, much more capable, much more great work, great results, great whatever it is that you're doing comes from that, because now everything gets realigned in that moment. You may lose it, but for, when you do that moment, you have could have a couple hours or a whole day or a whole week, depends on each individual being and where they are and how much they let the not allowing creep back in. But it puts everything in flow. So your customers, whether they're yours in your own business or the one you work for, will appreciate it, will notice it. You'll be the one that they want to talk to on the phone or go to your line or have, services, whatever it is, because it's palpable, even if you're not right near them.
Because you're doing it and you're creating that energetic envelope, you're broadcasting that wholeness, that perfection, that solution, that deliciousness. So everything you do in that space is wonderful. So this is the thing I've been working on, really, really working on. The minute that I don't feel delicious, I know who I'm identifying with. I mean, it's quite obvious and evident. So to take that moment and just be changes everything. And it's just a moment, because the minute that I engage, I'm there. And the more that I engage in whatever it is, like you were saying, being at work, or, like right now I have a lot going on in my life, and normally this would be one of the times where I sort of put my I am presence on the back burner. I have a lot of stuff to do. I can't really be oming or cross-legged right now. So, and then I make it very, very difficult for me and everyone around me, just for fun. But when I take a moment to be and to be who I am, then everything that I do carries that solution to it. And even if those around me are swirling, if I hold my presence, the swirling will stop, or it will go on so far away from me as if it has stopped. You see?
That's very true. And I want to add to that, because you and I are in the same household, so we are affected by all of the same goings on.
We are.
And yes, and I would add to what you just said. In that, for myself, what I've experienced in this very same thing is that even in those moments where there's a lot going on, this actually goes back to our very last conversation, as far as I'm concerned, is being able to recognize that there's a lot going on and being able to say, okay, wait a minute, I'm feeling overwhelmed, so I'm going to go over here and get myself collected and feel, and that's a part of being, right? A part of when one feels overwhelmed, respect oneself and say, okay, hold up a second, gonna take a sec and go get myself, resituated. And so that's a part of it. Actually, that's not only respecting my soul, that's actually, I feel today in particular, because this actually happened for me when we were actually doing a lot of things, and I began to feel overwhelmed. And in the past, I think I would more just jump up and try to do and fix and be, and and instead of
Control.
Because I'm control. I'm also learning about staying in my own lane. This is something I'm very cognizant of in this moment of now. And so I have to say that was actually that's a very good example of allowing my soul to drive the ship, because in times past I could have allowed any of that to allow Smarmy to step in and take over.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't do that. I was like, I think I'm just gonna beat feet for the moment and go take care of myself. And it was perfect for me, I think, and all concerned. Because it's no big deal. It's not like we had anything happen or anything. I just personally began feeling overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a couple.
That happens a lot for me too recently. Yeah. The overwhelm.
I bet, yeah.
It's big.
I heard a couple people asking some questions.
What were you going to say, BZ?
I said I heard a couple people asking some questions.
Okay.
Well, if they're at work, or how did this happen? And so, yesterday, a couple of these moments came up for me at work. So there was a lot going on, and really busy, and on many different levels and many different projects.
Right.
And at one point, I thought I need to just be for a minute. That's just the way I hold. I mean, if someone's standing right next to me, I'll say, well, I just need to be for a minute. And so right out loud, it doesn't matter what the person at work is doing or they're awake or whatever, I just say that, and they'll just watch me. I don't have to go off and do it. I can be right there and do it. So I could have my hand against, a wall if I'm inside, or a door, or the outside of a building, or a tree, or something like that. And my preference is, if there's a tree or something, that's always, or even a fence, it was once a tree, so you can still connect with that. And it just takes a nanosecond. And what it does to describe on a linear level is all of that kind of, I got to rush, I got to do this, kind of that to-do list. I'm falling behind. Am I doing this right? All those kinds of things. It just stops it for a minute. You're just taking the list and putting it down for a minute. You can pick it right back up if you choose to. And it's a reset of everything. It's like someone hit the pause button. So if you were being a machine-like and overheating in the overwhelm, which is usually, happen, and just and when you even do it one or two times, you'll notice that everything feels fresher. Everything feels brighter, like it was dark and kind of racing and cloudy and not sure what to do, because what you've actually done is, in that moment of being, you've let go of your perception of being overwhelmed, because that's what it is. Let go of the perception of the different things you may label, and you've let the energy frequency go. It just, you let it dissipate, and it flows away, and your natural frequency, which is flow, can come right back in. And yes, it's an excellent example of when you allow that to happen, you are allowing your soul to run the show, to drive the ship. Because, okay, that's pretty funny, but it's true. So a lot of times people think, well, this soul stuff, this spiritual stuff, that's great, but I'm down here on this planet, and, my soul just doesn't get it. I got to do these things, And actually, taking one of the examples of yesterday at work, my soul actually knows exactly what's going on, and all of the levels of all of the jobs that I do on multiple levels. And this is the best way to help me stay in flow, actually get back in flow would be more accurate, and to be stellar at all of my jobs, feeling really happy and engaged in all of my jobs. And it only takes less than a few shavings of a nanosecond to do. So, and what I think is fun is if people play with just this concept of this conversation, so just this little bit concept here, they will notice so many times in their own life, in all different areas of their life, where the language may be a little bit, come across a little bit different, but it's their soul has been asking them and directing them, and saying, come on, let's be for a moment. And we blow it off with all sorts of different things, every excuse in the book. And the irony for us in the little shirt, being really small, is that every single one of those excuses comes to fruition in the opposite of what we thought we would be gaining by not taking just a tiny little moment to be. So it takes us so much longer to do this or that. It's just this one little thing now. This is taking, 20 minutes, an hour, whatever it is, because we had to clean up or redo or, whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Too true on that one.
So in that, what's the payoff? What, when you think of yourself doing that, what's the payoff? For me, given the example I just gave, yesterday at work, I can't answer the question, the title of the thing, because the payoff for me to actually allow my soul to run the ship was that the perception of things going haywire or things being overwhelming or all sorts of things doesn't ever arise, because I hear it, I feel it, I know it. One of the times someone was standing right next to me and they said, okay, not quite sure, this is a new person, not sure what I was talking about. Okay. And watched. I didn't move, just put my hand on a tree. And literally in 15 seconds, they smiled and they said, I don't know what you did, but you look completely different. And I said, okay, well, I'm ready now. So, and this brings up a good point, this idea of hiding. I have to couch my language, and I have to, I can't bring my I am present out unless it's, for those special days. All those kinds of things has got to stop.
Yeah.
Because that goes with this as well. That's just got to stop.
Well, you could be like me and allow it to lead the show, like I did this weekend. So that could work.
Yeah.
Well, it's a funny story. I'll have to tell you about it. But if we're answering it in the opposite direction, I know what the payoff is to when we allow it. I feel that now, and that's wow. That's a good the payoff to allow your soul to do the driving.
Nothing ever goes wrong, and everything feels delicious. I don't know what took me so long.
No, right?
I'm kind of done. A little slow, but hey, I got it now.
Well, I got it, but I'll be honest with you. Sometimes it's still difficult with all the programming and conditioning. It's getting easier, right?
Yeah,
much easier. I'm not in the in the zone or in the flow all the time, I'm still, and like right now, boy, I told I told Lisa before we started, when we stopped so I could fill up my water, I told her, I said, I'm already having moving trucks. So, but so that's why the only payoff I could associate with not allowing for me was, again, identifying with the identity of whatever the smallness was, which I had a whole crap ton of different identities now I can see while I was being small, and I can name them all off, and there's really no point in that. But I mean, that was that payoff, I was sick, I'm disabled, I've been abused in my life. I'm, all these horrible things that I identified with that went into making up who I am, or thought, that programmed and conditioned personality type, all those different parts of that I identified. That's the only payoff. And that's not really a payoff.
Yeah.
Not really. Not now that I've had a glimpse of what actually having my soul, all of me, which I know is a whole hell of a lot huger than the energy that resides in this vessel right now. I got a glimpse of what that feels like. Wow, pale is not even a word to describe the difference in those payoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
I'll give you an oft described, and I don't mean that people often describe it exactly what I'm going to describe it. What I mean is that when I'm having a conversation with them and they're relaying something, this is actually what they're relaying. And I could have 30 people standing next to me and each relaying, and that would seemingly be totally different. The relay of information, the relay of, the reason why, the excuse, the story, however you want to hold it, would be completely different. And it would be the same. They're all actually saying the same thing. And that is because there is a fear that they have to give something up that they're attached to, because the flow of their soul driving the ship is bigger. It's all encompassing. I remember so many years ago, there was the phrase, it's been around forever, but this or something better. And I thought, well, whose idea better is it? I mean, is it my idea better or somebody else's idea better? And am I going to be good enough to get better? So those are similar kinds of things on the payoff. And the other one was a very long time ago, and I somehow related to something I heard in Sunday school, which I got kicked out of. But it was about God loving me. And this is kind of, with Lisa and her I am presence only in one spot. And I thought, well, but does that being really know me, and will they still want to love me if they knew me? So again, all those things are those small things. And so here's a kind of a reverse payoff. If you don't like the man,
but when you experience sudden, frequent, uncontrollable
wait a minute. What?
It's going on. This is called pseudobulbar affect, or PBA, a condition that can occur from brain injury or certain neurologic conditions like stroke or dementia.
Okay, I have no idea where that came from, so I closed all of everything that was open in the back.
Are you doing the dishes over there? Is that what you're doing?
I don't know what in the world, what drove that, but I just shut everything except Zoom. So
something just started to play on its own.
Yes, it was a commercial from somewhere about incontinence, if I'm not mistaken.
I know, it was pharmaceutical. Okay, good. Yay.
So, sorry for the momentary interruption.
Well, I was just going to do a reverse of the payoff for the false construct when you don't allow your soul to drive the boat is absolutely delicious for them. So if you don't like, the cabal or the banksters or the man, or however you phrase the different things that, you're under the thumb of, and they've been ripping you off, and when are they going to go to jail and mass arrests and yada, 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 yada. Then every time that you don't do any of these things, they are going, yes, another one. Yes, another one is doing this. Another one is not loving themselves. Another one is being small. Another one, oh, there they go again. There they go again. It's like, you have an energetic piggy bank, and they have to keep getting bigger piggy banks to hold all of the energy coins that you're putting in it from doing it. So, that isn't quite what we had in mind when we had this title, but it's actually an interesting way to look at it, because that's what's occurring.
Yes. Well, that's actually
investing your energy in it.
Yeah, exactly. That is an upcoming topic on my list to talk about. So, and it does sort of go hand in hand with this conversation, as far as I'm concerned.
The things that if you're not letting your ego mind run the show, if you're not letting the really tiny, small perceivedness of you run the show, then this won't be a problem. But when you are doing those things, then your list of top best things, to do, be, or have is going to be incredibly different from your soul's list of those things. And since we're well entrenched in the perception grooves of how purportedly delicious those lists of the first list that I made, that your ego mind has are so great, and they're the bomb and all that kind of stuff. And ask anyone who gave up everything, sacrificed everything to climb that corporate ladder for this, that, and the other thing, and got up here and gone, okay, and then they, sold everything and moved across the world, or they sold everything and drove around the car, whatever it is. There's stories all over the place about these kinds of things. So there is a difference between those two, the energy frequency of those two lists. So that may be the perceived payoff. Maybe you have a feeling of that somewhere, and it's an accurate feeling that there are two different lists. But the list, so to say, the energy frequency of the list that your soul has is really spectacular and really exciting and really adventurous, and a whole host of energetic frequency feelings to what it entails and encompasses. The only time then there may be but I want that, pointing to the other list, is because we view that from the lens of being small, of, well, I gotta grab this for me now because I may never get it again. That's my ship, it's gonna sail. So one of the things that you may want to play with it in the same kind of way to kind of clean the closet, to clean the cobwebs and stuff, is every time that there are so many in the, and it doesn't matter which country you're in and what language you speak, but there are so many kind of, well, there's probably different ways that you could describe the forms of speech, but they're either euphemisms or they're little sayings or they're phrases or they're kind of little catch descriptions. And you'll know when you come across one, it'll just happen, just the next moment you think about it. These little phrases and sayings, my ship's going to come in, or I got to catch my ship before it sails, that kind of thing. Those are all oft used because they are caging triggers.
Well, I'm glad you brought this up in this way, actually, BC, because, going through all of my personal belongings here and preparing to adventure off into the unknown, not knowing, where I might go, what I might end up doing, that sort of thing. I've vacillated sometimes. Absolutely. I operate on $1,000 a month, and, so you get rid of something you think you might need, and, you kind of go through, well, what do I do? And I don't want to approach it from, oh, I must hold on to this because I'll never get it again, because then again, I'm holding something very, very tightly, and I already know better than to do that. So there's that, but that's also a program. It's a program condition response. It's also, and this has happened to me a lot. I'll let something go, and then I'll need it in 5 minutes, and now I don't have it, and oh crap, now how am I going to get it back, or get the money to get it, or find out, so there's a lot that goes into this. And so I have taken a moment to be sometimes when trying to decide those things too. So I recognize that, and I also recognize the energetic of fear behind it for myself, because I've been going through this now for, well, really more than a year, since my split happened and everything. I wasn't sure if I would be able to stay in this house, and so there's a lot of that's been going on. And so a lot of examining has come up for me on that. And I'm aware that what gets behind that is the fear of not being able to obtain whatever I think I might need in the future. And I don't want to live my life like that either, because again, That's fear is not love.
Right.
I know that I'm going to be provided for. I know this now. I've seen evidence of it right here in this house. And, everything so far has been provided. And yet, and still, there is still that programmed and conditioned groove that as I'm looking at something, oh, wait a minute, I might need this 5 minutes from now. What do I do? So sometimes I'll set it over here in this pile and say, okay, well, I'll hold on to it for 5 more minutes. Or, no, I'm going to let that go now. And, and so I recognize that that's not an easy process always.
It's
but
not.
taking that time out. No.
And, you can get very, well, especially now, because I remember I was going through a sorting and purging because I was just about to become homeless. And so I had a place to be able to store a few things, and I had, lots of accumulations. So I was going through them, and it's almost like there's, when you come into the planet, you get different lists, and that's, well, what if I'm going to need it in 5 minutes? That's on the list. That's a stock one right on the list. Make sure everybody's got that. What about, so there's the hoarding, because it's the small, it's the, I gotta, and I realized, because I had direct empirical data show up right in front of me, that when I went through gyrations like that, and my energy frequency was clear, pure in that group. I don't mean clear and pure energy. I mean, it was clear and pure. There was no other light fluffy. It was all on that. And I would give something away or sell something, whatever it was, and 5.5 minutes later, that would come around and I would need it. And it was like, and it got to the point where I just was busting the gut laughing, because I thought, wow, it's like a sign on my back, or, or are they just standing outside waiting to tell me that I need this? And when I, got grumpy or sad or pissed off or a various range, for a couple of things, I could see the humor that I was just setting all this up so that I could let it all go, because I needed to get out of my intellectual exercise about this whole creator beingness and yada, yada, yada. And, because you said everything will be provided for. Well, yeah, because all of me provides for all of me. And so when I would hold it a different way, literally and figuratively, and the energy of it, and then I started having great fun where I would waltz into, I pretty much was waltzing, and people were really happy to see me waltzing into the thrift shop or something with these different, these were really not normally things you would see at the thrift shop, but really nice paintings and all sorts of stuff. And I'd say, well, I sure hope someone will find, joy out of these things. And the feeling that I got of letting it go without letting it go, right? Without that worry, without the, I paid so much for this, or I worked so hard for this, or whatever crap, or I'll need it in 5 minutes. They're all the same thing. It's all the same iteration. And the joy that came into each individual being, and this was a particular thrift shop where it was all the proceeds that it generated was for a really good cause. So here were, the people who were working the shop, they thought it was great and had these things, and the money was, coming through, and the people who were getting these treasures, because for them, they were a treasure and they loved it. And in that, I realized it's all energy. And it's just moving into different places. And when I did those things, and maybe later I thought, oh yeah, I had something like that once. And the habit of kind of, well, but I had to give it away because I, went homeless, or, all that. It only came and crept in for a nanosecond. What I remembered instead, what my soul running the show did for me was put a video clip of the being who got that particular thing and how excited, and they're off and they're playing in the color that lit them up. And I thought, and so I remembered that and was immersed in that. And if it wasn't that a gift came right around the corner, or just out of the blue, some opportunity, or this or that other thing, just winged its way right on the heels of that thought and the choosing to keep allowing my soul to run the thing. And it was pretty funny because it was like, okay, I need to stop thinking about that because I have all these things coming in, that just slow it down. So I bring that story up because that's really how it works. And we are the genesis of how it works. We're the ones who choose how it flows. And that kind of gets back to the whole larger context of this particular conversation, is that we're all changing, and we're all going through a transformation, a metamorphosis. And it can't be stopped, and it won't be thwarted. And we're at a space now where we're beyond critical mass for all of it. So we can choose to play with it in different ways and choose our own flowing of that. And if that is, I want no part of this, and I'll take my chances, whatever it is, I like being in this space that I'm in, then that's great. But just realize that you're choosing it, and own that, and be excited about that, because a wonderful adventure will flow from that. And there's, how many beings on the surface of this planet? So those are all those different kinds of adventures. And none of them is right or wrong, because you're infinite. So
yeah, that's another conversation too. Let me write that down, because I'm serious about that. That right and wrong thing.
Yeah.
Well, this has really been a good one. We always have good ones. I don't know why I always say that every time I say that. And well, it's always true. But
well, next time we'll try to do one that sucks. How's that?
I hate to burst your bubble, but we don't do sucky conversations. At least I've never participated in one yet. Now, not everybody out there might agree.
We could write it that what it looks like to be really small.
Yeah, I was trying to picture what we would have to do that, and I'm not so sure I want to be. I don't know that I want to have that conversation. I've worked kind of hard to try to not be small anymore, so I don't.
Right?
We could probably point to a few things that I do on the reg, but let's not try to do the whole thing. Well, on this one, do either one of you have anything else that you'd like to add before we close this envelope?
I'd say that what's the payoff to allowing your soul to drive the ship is 20 of the most amazing, spectacular, awe-inspiring, gobsmacking delicious things you've ever thought of, and then some. And that's a pale use of phrase.
And you, Lisa? Any final words?
Well, I think the big payoff is the life that feels wonderful. Just give it a try and you'll see. Everything else pales in comparison.
Well, for me, I'd like to call attention to the fact that it was way easier for all three of us to talk about the payoff for allowing your soul to drive the ship, as opposed to what the payoff is for not allowing your soul to drive the ship. And quite frankly, the only payoff that I can even think of is the, the identity that one might associate with allowing the small me to drive the ship rather than the big me, the soul. And again, no judgment on for anyone. I just found it very interesting how we started this conversation talking about what's the payoff in not allowing, but all three of us were very clear on what the payoff is on the allow. I mean, I know that sometimes it's like I can feel a smarmy elbow is way into the driver's seat on occasion. And I'm trying to get him to remain shotgun. He doesn't always sit over there. But at least he's not, throwing my soul out of the vehicle, because I don't think it's possible anymore.
No, it's not. We passed that.
Right.
And that's another conversation.
Yeah.
One thing I did want to add, and I would love to actually, if people want to email us or write a comment in the video or on the IUV when I publish it, wherever, there's a space, and let us know what your payoff, either way, on either side of the flipping the question, is, because that would be very helpful for me to know that. Delicious to play with if it's kind of the way we flipped it, and very helpful if it's the other way.
Well, I also think it's very interesting that you actually picked up and said that, because I was going to ask if anyone was interested. I'd love to see their lists of both that's what I was getting ready to say too, was I'd love to see if anyone wanted to share their list as to, you had said something before about the list of versus this. And so that must be, you picked up on that. That's awesome. So all of the information on how to get in touch with each one of us is contained in the show more section of this video, of course. And so I would love to hear that too. So, or in the comment section beneath the video, that's if you don't mind doing it there. So that's always available as well. So until next time.
Much love.